All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to 3D6 Charge, a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40K and community news. We're streaming live at twitch.tv/3D6Charge every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, where you can also follow and subscribe. We're also anywhere you can find podcasts like Spotify or iTunes. This is episode 24, Thought Exercises in Dealing with Novel Situations. I'm your host, Chris Vo, and joining me tonight are Kevin Lieb.
Howdy, howdy.
Benjamin Rubenstein.
Hey, everyone.
And Omar Q.
Hello, friends.
All right, so let's just start off with how's everybody doing? Anything new going on? If you guys want to talk about, community news, personal news, whatever you want.
Pretty excited for the new Death Guard stuff. The rules look fun.
There are some big things we can see going to Chaos Space Marines. They've already told us that at least the Death Guard Legion trait is going to be applied to all their models, so it's a fair assumption it's going to apply to all Chaos Space Marine models. So that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look forward to my rhinos getting plus 6 inches on their smite ranges.
Hey, most traits are going to become 2 parts.
It's true. I actually look forward to is the second half of my trait. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for the Death Guard stuff too. I'm holding my breath for what they're teasing about Disgustingly Resilient, which will be put out tomorrow. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to points. But I mean, I like what I see so far.
Surprise, we've been holding off the old Disgusting Resilient rule for 4 days this week.
Yeah.
So
we're all just waiting for that to pop up.
Yeah. So for tonight's topic, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to have each of us come up with a list, and then I wanted to present to you guys a position on a board. I'm going to be using Tabletop Simulator to illustrate it, and I'll show you guys using Discord, and it'll be on the stream as well. But I basically want to show you, like, all right, this is how this certain army has deployed. These are the secondaries that they're taking because they're army agnostic, matchup agnostic mostly. And what would you do to deal with it? So basically, I'll show you the deployment. I know it's not, full deploy anymore, but I'll show you, how he would have deployed, because he only had one game plan. And this is from a real life example of mine from a game that I played over the past weekend. It was a top table final game for a tabletop sim league where $20 was on the line.
Ooh, big money.
Yeah.
Who won?
We'll get to that at the end, but let me set the stage for you guys here. So I gotta let's see. I hope this works. Let me stream Tabletop Sim to you guys, and then here we go. All right, you see that okay on Discord?
Yep,
indeed.
Perfect. Okay, so oh damn, it won't. Let me. I want it to.
It might be worthwhile sharing the screen rather than sharing the application. That way, if you zoom away, it doesn't disappear on you.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to do now. I probably should have done this before we went live and tested it, but what are you gonna do? All right. Anyway, let me just add a new window capture here.
So while he's doing that, let me tell you about this wonderful, wonderful paint job I did here. Look at this beautiful, beautiful Master of Possession. Look at its wonderful blue robe and purple armor, and look at those wonderful flames.
All right,
is that enough time, Chris?
Yes.
More things okay, we're good to go. Never mind. I will not rant about.
No, go ahead and rant.
Okay, cool. So things that I'm excited about, because I never got to answer that question. I sort of riffed off of Kevin, which is my bad. Sorry for interrupting. looking at what they've done to Mortarion, I'm very excited to see what they do to Magnus. For those of you who don't know, they gave Mortarion the option at the beginning of every game he gets to pick a Warlord trait. And if you didn't catch it, the list that he picks from is actually the Warlord traits from the cult. From the play companies, not from the main rulebook. So if Magnus gets a similar thing where he gets to like pick a Warlord trait from one of the cults of the Thousand Sons, that'll be pretty horrifying. Like basically, no matter which cult he picks, there's some pretty nonsense things going in there. They also wickedly buffed Mortarion's melee profile to the point where Mortarion's actually just bar none better at melee than Magnus is now. Did we lose some?
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally hit the wrong button.
It used to be that Mortarion was worse at anti-tank but better anti-infantry, and Magnus kind of blew him out of the water for anti-tank, and now Magnus is getting blown out of the water. So I'm really excited to see what happens to Magnus when that Thousand Sons Codex drops. Mortarion also got tankier too, which is, you know.
Yeah, that T8 is really tasty. I've had a Mortarion model sitting on my shelf for almost a year. Used it 3 times because it was cool. Just have not been able to enjoy him as much as I would like to.
Yeah, actually, I suspect that Magnus is not going to be able to just pick from the cult warlord traits because some of them would be broken on him. Like, oh, he's going to cast 4 powers a turn and do +1 damage with every power. Like, that's not going to be a thing. And there's another one where that when he dies, he gets to reanimate. And like, again, I highly doubt we're doing that on him. So I suspect that we'll see something else on him, which is cool though. Actually, no, that one's a relic. Actually, I apologize.
I mean, I could see them maybe reworking them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But keep
Either way, though, they put a bunch of new rules on Mortarion. He's also just a full chapter master now. Like he just has a captain aura and a chapter master, like beginning of your turn trigger, which is sweet.
I forget, 6 inches, 12 inches.
You pick a unit 6 inches in your command phase, and I don't think they have to be within 6 inches of you afterwards.
Yeah, it's just the actual space marine chapter master rule.
Not 7 inches. Come on.
Not 7 inches. Nope. There's actually a lot of grumbling about that on the Death Guard page where pretty much everything on his data sheet is 6 inches. They took away a lot of that flavor 7 inches stuff. I'm not really sure why.
I mean, to be fair to GW,
7 inches is pretty far. 7 inches is like a big bubble.
Yeah,
6 is enough. All right, was that enough time? Are we good?
Yep, we're good now. All right, I figured it out. All right, cool. So let me switch over the thingamabobber to TTS so I can show you guys what we're working with here. So the mission is search and destroy. So it's the one where you're doing table quarters deployment, and there's 5 objectives. 1 in each quadrant and 1 in the center. So your opponent is playing Custodes. So what he's got is basically he's got Trajan. He's got a bike cap. For his troops, he's got 3 units of Sagittarium Guard here, which as I found out are disgusting.
Yeah, real good.
Yeah. He's got a Vexilla with the -1 banner, a unit of 5 Alaris Custodians, a Contemptor Gladys Dreadnought
with the sword.
Yeah, and then 2 Telemons with the 1 autocannon and then the fist with the flamer built in. Yep. And for his secondaries here, he picked Domination, which is hold more. It's 3 points for hold more at the end of your turn. Grind them down, so 3 points if they kill more units than you did. And Direct Assault, which is 3 points if they hold the center at the end of the turn, or 5 points if they hold the center and your the one in your deployment zone. So this one over here in the corner. So I don't know if you guys have looked into Telemons, but they are very gross. I hate them a lot. It's like 230 points for T8, 14 wounds, 2 up save, 4 up invulnerable save, 6 up feel no pain, duty eternal. Just a real pain to try to shift.
Yeah, it's a little absurd.
So are you asking how we would deploy against this?
So having seen this and like knowing like what the objectives he took, what would you think? Like, I know like it's supposed to be I go, you go deployment. I know that, but like let's just assume that he was going to deploy like this no matter what. How would you deploy against it? What would be your game plan going into this game? What do you think that this opponent is trying to do?
Okay. Just remind me of the kind of shooting that I'm looking at over here. Is this a heavy firepower list? I know we have the Sagittarium Guard back there. How many units was it?
It's 3 units of 3. So the Sagittarium Guard, they have their spear gun thing, which has 2 profiles. First one being 36 inches or 30 inches. It's up there.
Yeah.
It's like assault 3, strength 5, -1, 2 damage, I believe. And then their 18-inch profile, which is assault 1, strength 5, -3, flat 3 damage. And they can choose to fire both of those profiles at the same time at a -1 to hit penalty. And these guys are innately hitting on 2 up.
Okay.
Bike Captain does Bike Captain thinks he's got a Hurricane Bolter. The Alaris Custodians, can't remember what they had for a gun, but it's
a bolter. It's not, the gun isn't anything to, I think it's AP 1 damage, and then they've got their grenade. No, their regular gun is 1 damage.
It's a Castellanax, which is,
Well, no, are we talking about the shooting or the hitting?
That weapon's 2 damage.
It's 2 damage, Omar. Either the spear or the axe is 2 damage.
Yeah, all custo weapons are 4 1 2.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
their 1 damage component is the grenade launcher, and the grenade launcher is -3 AP, which man, they used to be really good against tactical / chaos based raids. Real good.
Yeah. And then the Telemons are equipped with the autocannon, which, if I'm remembering correctly, is something like 8 shots. Hold on, where's my codex? It's like 8 shots and strength 7. I want to say -2, and I believe it's 2 damage. Hold on, I'm gonna look this up real quick right now.
All right. So I think to answer this question, we need to go through our entire list and then talk about our plan.
Yeah, so each one of us came up with a list that we would basically try to figure out what we would do against this army, this deployment. And then the Telemon, his gun is heavy 4, 48 inches, strength 7, AP 3, 2 damage.
All right.
I'll dive in.
Yeah, I was going to say someone go first. I need a sec to think.
So I'm running Ultramarines with Goleman. And essentially what it would be is I would want to hit one of the Telemons as hard as possible earlier in the game. I can throw enough punching power and firepower towards the Custodians, but if the Telemons go off unchecked, I'm dead. It's a smaller deployment zone. I think, given the choice, I would actually let him go first and deploy very conservatively looking at that list. There's enough firepower in there that he could just wipe me out. But all things being equal, I get to go second. My assault intercessors are running up the board to hit him. My eradicator is going to be concentrating on a Telemon. My stalker bolt intercessors are shooting twice into a Telemon. And we're hoping to take it down with weight of fire. Assault, if my shooting takes it down, which it might, but it's no guarantee, then what ends up happening...
So just to cut in real quick, I did the math on, say, like 10 Harlequin Skyweavers with the Haywire, and it only had like 2 full squads. It had only had, I believe, like it had a very low percentage of actually like going forward with getting a kill on it. It was not a guaranteed kill, and it was almost a coin flip. So keep in mind, like, these things are disgustingly tough against shooting.
So if that's the case, then I'd actually put a lot more power into his Alaris, his Terminators, because there's objective secured models.
Yes, that's
my
right.
assault, my assault intercessors could hit them. Again, going second, they could hit them. They could charge it, and they could make that charge with Goleman's +1 and a reroll. And where they really shine is I can pay a CP for them to reroll any hit. and I can pay another CP for 6s to wound, and I can go fishing for 6s. So I don't have to make that wound roll as often as I'd like. It's with 40 attacks, it does pretty well. I transhuman physiology them to make sure they don't. It's a lot of CP in one unit, but to make sure that they can keep going. And on top of that, I'd do my best to. I'd want to set them up to fight second if there are enough models left on the table. Taking out those. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a quick question. The Sagittarium Guard, do they have Mescordius?
I didn't believe in my game that they did, but like for just imagine that they do for this example.
Yeah.
It actually drastically changes it because it gives them a great melee profile as opposed to a bad melee profile. So it actually very much changes my answer.
I mean, the Sagittarium, I'm honestly worrying about last. I'm running 2 Eradicator squads, so that would also go into whatever they can in terms of. I wouldn't necessarily throw them all in the Dreadnought. I'd want to take down as many of his infantry models as possible. And past that, I'd be running Golem up the board to fight one of the Dreads. Where my list starts to really do work is turn 1. I'm kind of. It's that first wave, depending on deployments, depending on how he moves. Ideally, it's the Blade Guard, the Indominus Captain, and the Assault Intercessors that get to meet his infantry in a wave. What Warlord trait did the Shield Captain have?
Oh shoot, I don't remember.
Was it the 3-up invuln or the -1 to hit?
I'm pretty sure it was the 3-up. Yeah, it was the 3-up.
Yeah, it's just throwing a lot of weight on these models that's going to work. But where I think my list can actually start to do work against him is dropping my Inceptors against his Sagittarium. His Sagittarium are going to get to run around for a turn, but ideally, I'm going second. I'm hiding my guys so that they can't outshoot me off the board immediately. And that first melee engagement, there's a lot of gambling going on. I'm throwing a lot of bodies at it, but the hope is I whittle things down enough that my guys are able to keep the fight going between the Blade Guard vets, 10 Assault Intercessors, and Goleman, ideally. Where things start to get a little crazy is the Inceptors. I think the Inceptors, if I put all of them into the Sagittarium, it's, you said 2 units of 5, 3 units of 5, you said?
The Sagittarium are 3 units of 3.
3 units of 3. I think if I put my Inceptors into them, I should be able to take 2 out. Between 2 4-man squads of Bolter ones and one 3-man or 1 4-man squad of Plasmas. There should be enough firepower to take out 2 of them there. And then Goleman can clean up with the Telemon. There are enough Eradicators will be firing into the Dread, into each Dread.
You said you have 2 4-man squads of the Bolter ones?
Yep, and 1 4-man squad of Plasma.
Why not just max those out to 5?
So the 2 4-man squads are only killing 2 models.
Assume rerolling once to hit.
Yeah.
Yes, no, still
2 models. You have AP. You're just.
It'll be AP. It'll be either invuln, AP2, because they're dropping turn 2.
Right. What faction is your opponent playing? Because some of the Custode factions have the ability to mess with your opponent's weapon strength.
Yeah, it's the one that lets them. It's the Solar Keeper, so they have the ability to just turn all of the weapons against them to like -1 strength.
Yeah, that's a disaster.
Okay, great.
You're not killing them with your Bolter guys.
Yeah.
Great.
So because the Inceptors, they're heavy bolters, but like you'd be wounding on 5s because they turn it down to strength 4.
Great. Then in that case,
if you're AP2, you're killing 2, like 2 on average, which means 1 or 2, because you're never getting to the third one. Just be like 1 or 2.
Yeah, I mean, I can also split fire with the plasma ones.
How many plasma ones you got?
4? Are you re-rolling ones on those? Because you said you were re-rolling ones on your bolter
So
guys.
I would try to set things up where they're within rerolls. Because the bolter guys are 2 squads. I would try to set things up so that they've got access to rerolls from a character.
Yeah,
so,
that squad kills 2 more guys. Like
so
they're gonna come out, kill a couple guys, and then get cut down by those dreadnoughts.
yeah, it's a suicide squad. So like but at least like the thing about like an
thing.
army, the thing about an army this size, it's only like 19 models, is that you have like you can do all of the positioning that you want against it because it isn't a heavy board control army. Can it move forward and like control the middle of the board? Yes, absolutely. Can it control the middle of the board and like 3/4 of the board as well? No, it can't.
Okay. Yeah, throwing yourself at a custodian's list is always a little scary. They hit so hard in melee.
I play custodians enough, and the idea being, especially with the assault intercessors at first, it's you want to soften up. You want to soften them up. That's all you're trying to do. You're doing Gene Rot Might specifically to fish for 6s because they are ultramarines and they can do that. And I mean, it's worked. It's done enough for me in game that obviously not they've got great saves and all that fun stuff, but it's produced enough wounds that I'm comfortable doing that and spending that CP. But the other one is it's all trying to soften targets up for Gulliman and his Blade Guard squad to come in. Because my captain has Burning Blade and the Imperium Sword. The lieutenant has Rights of War, and Gulliman's buffing everyone up.
So you're basically gonna try to meet his death ball with your death ball and hope that Gilliman can carry it on his back.
But it's not just that. It's softening because he's got a death ball that whatever it touches is going to die on an individual level. I'm coming at it with waves and I'm softening it up with waves. There's a lot of shooting in the list, so my stalker bolt guys can throw some firepower out there. I've got 6 eradicators with the heavy melter rifle, so they can also soften targets up for me. When the Inceptors come down, they can also start to soften things up.
I mean, not to burst your bubble, Omar, but I think you're overestimating what some of those Stalker Bolt rifles can do because you're at -1 to hit. So, I mean, granted, that means you can like freely move and then shoot. But even if you're double shooting with, I'm assuming a squad of 5, half your shots are missing. Squad of 10, half your shots are still missing. That's 10 shots hitting. You're wounding on 5s because you're strength 4, and these guys are all at least T5. So you're only getting 3 wounding shots through, and then they're wounding on and they're saving on their invuls. So maybe 1-2 damage shot goes through.
Yeah, and I mean, again, any amount of damage on custodies hurts. This is coming from someone who plays them. Any amount of damage on your models hurts. Feels easy at first, but if you concentrate your firepower on one spot and then move to the other, you'll start ripping through the list.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. Kevin, you want to hit us with your list?
Sure. So I'm playing creation. Would be playing Creations of Bile. So obviously Fabulous Bile. I'm bringing a Demon Prince with wings, with a Hell Sword and Intoxicating Elixir, and also Master's Creation for additional strength and toughness. A Dark Apostle for some basic prayers. 220-man Chaos Space Marine squads with chain swords. Sergeants having power fists. A big Terminator squad with double lightning claws. A slightly smaller Terminator squad also with lightning claws. Some chaos spawns for some screening, and a max size unit of obliterators. So when I'm looking at this list, if I would have actually expected him to put one of those units at Deep Drink, but either way, I'd kind of want to use the Chaos Spawn to get a little bit of screening, and maybe make it so that he has to commit something to a flank. When I think about Custodes, they have to actually send things places. So
So what?
One
Let's
of the
start.
things
Let's
that,
start with secondaries. What secondaries are you taking against this army?
So I think I can get. I think this is going to be an easy deploy scramblers. I think he has a good job with domination. So I might actually take the mission secondary here. If I'm not mistaken, the mission secondary is 5 points if you have a guy in the middle at the end of your turn, and 5 points if you have a guy on your 3 points.
It's the mission one is direct assault. It's 3 points if you control the middle objective at the end of your turn. 5 points if you control the middle objective and your opponent's deployment zone objective.
Gotcha. So is it? Do you also get 3 points for just owning your opponent's one, or does it have to be the middle one for the 3 point part?
It's got to be the middle one. It might be the. Hold on. I think it's either one.
Okay. The reason why I bring that up is I kind of expect this list to move forward, and I have some deep strikers, so I might actually be able to take that one from him, unless he keeps a lot back. But that's also a win because I'll probably just win on the primary, so I might actually think about taking that one here. And what would I want the last one to be?
Would you take
Sorry,
like
my
engage?
Yeah, engage on all fronts. That's it. Yeah.
I think engage is good for your list. I think it's pretty easy here.
Yeah. Oh, actually, engage is really easy with this mission setup. Just the deployment, the corner deployment makes engage real easy. You don't actually have to move that far at all.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, you could just like have, like, can a chaos spawn score it? Yeah, so you could just have like a chaos spawn here and here, and then like turn one, just move them forward like 5 inches or whatever, and then there you go. There's your engage on all fronts.
Yeah, especially because you have 3 cheap ones. You don't like if you're trying to get the 4-pointers, like you don't care about like your dinky little 23 chaos spawn dying because your opponent didn't put anything deep strike, so you don't care about just like throwing one at him, just being like, haha, that's a point.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. When I think about trying to like take apart this list, part of me, so the dreadnoughts, it's obvious 9th edition, so we get some shooting, but I still would kind of want to wrap them up so they can't get to places. One of my things on my list does well is it gets us shoot things forward and kind of wrap things up. This is kind of why I was asking about the Sagittarium Guard having guns or not.
You mean the Misericordia?
Misericordia or not? Obviously they have guns. Forgive me. Because I've actually experienced Sagittarium Guard getting stuck into melee with a bunch of Space Marines.
I remember that game.
Without Misericordias, they don't make it through there. And
no, they don't.
And then you lose a lot of shooting. So my list can warp time. It can advance and charge with a unit. It's kind of low risk to do that because if I send something up the flank and I still get warp time off, I can still at least charge something. The unit's still going to hit hard. When I think about what unit I would want to do that, it might be the 20-man Chaos Prism unit. It might be the 7-man Terminator unit that I might be placing on the board. If I'm thinking more about the fail-safe scenario. And more use the 20-man blob as a corralling method.
Right, and just to remind everyone, those Terminators are strength 5, right? Because of your Legion trait.
Yes.
So strength 5 with Lightning Claws, so rerolling all wound rolls.
So 4 is rerolling everything. That's pretty good against Custodians.
And they can't even pop the only moving on force trap because force. So you're just kind of crushing them. Well, not crushing them in melee, but you're a serious threat in melee, which a lot of things aren't to Custodes.
Right. The other thing I can think about doing is going up a toughness against them isn't super relevant. Kabyle can upgrade the toughness of units, guaranteed with his upgrade ability, but he can also increase attacks or increase strength on the unit. I'd be shooting for attacks because extra attacks just matters. They'd be 2 base, +1 for the charge, 2 lightning claws, and then +1 for him. So 6 attacks per Terminator and the ability to double fight. So that unit can chop. It can chop.
Yeah, it's very fighty.
Yeah, and you can also take +1 to wounds.
Yeah, and because you can still use look, you can't.
Veterans.
Can they use veterans?
They can.
Okay,
yeah. Chapter.
Yeah, so they can use
Yeah,
veterans too, and which veterans is huge against a blob of T5 plus like a Custodes army is.
Yeah, they're brand spanking new, but man, you can still just veterans them. It's also probably more relevant when you're swinging lightning claws into those dreadnoughts that you can veterans.
Yeah, because
So
then
one
you're
of the
doing
things-
fours rerolling against the dreadnoughts, which is pretty big.
Yep. When I think about what my list can, where it wants to spend some CP, I'm gonna kind of go with what Omar was suggesting and try to do a little bit of crippling if I have the ability to cripple. In this regard, I'm thinking obliterators getting +1 to hit. Bile can make them reroll all failed hits. No, sorry, all hits, not failed hits, all hits. So and then obviously there's the Nesha, they can double shoot. So I could see using them to get, if I feel like I could cripple a dreadnought, I want to say between the powers that Bile has, the abilities that Bile has access to, I can come back to my next turn with at least 2 of them still alive. Bile's creations of Bile have the ability to give a infantry unit +1 toughness. They have many ways to give -1 out. So I believe with that, and then you can, based on the terrain, I can have them touching the cover, so they'd have like very good armor saves. I want to say I can keep them alive for a little bit, or the opponent would have to like solely focus on them and expose other openings.
So when you say you want to you want to cripple a dreadnought, I'm assuming you're talking about one of the Telemons because the Contemptor is, I believe, 9 wounds, so he doesn't degrade.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think that between the fact that my list is very melee and this board kind of makes us just like run at each other, but I have better mobility, I get the Alpha Strike, and I actually think I'll be able to like cripple with some shooting and then kill in melee. Is what I meant.
Okay.
I like that.
Thinking about deploying, once again, this person deployed very aggressively. But once again, I still have the mobility advantage. I have the ability to make units advance and charge, and I have the ability to double move units. And my guys naturally move faster than his guys, so I feel like I actually get to deploy more defensively and make it so that if he goes first, he doesn't get a lot out of it too.
Yeah, so you did deploy behind like all of the terrain there, not real, and not basically just deploy right on the line and hoping that you get first, because that advance and charge gives you a lot of options. And the way that he's deployed, he's very clearly gunning for the center of the board. So if he gets first, he's at least coming towards you and closing the gap himself.
I need to play some tabletop simulator. My brain's having a hard time like really thinking about where things can actually get placed. Like part of me wants to send some stuff over to the right in that one ruin. I don't know how much, because I do have some pretty big blobs. I don't know how much I can actually hide behind stuff. It's hard for my mind to imagine it right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, no, I think you have that's a solid plan. Like you've definitely got to try for like the weight of attacks and just force them to roll dice to make a dent in it. If you just let them get away with not rolling too many saves, well, it's a bunch of 2-up saves. They're gonna make most of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things that's nice is it's only 1 AP, but there's a lot of 1 AP and 2 AP. It's all 1 or 2 AP in my list, so I'm not just like actually hitting my head against 2-up saves.
Yeah.
I guess besides the does he have I forget? Is there some sword and boards in the front there, or are those Terminators in the front?
Those are all Terminators.
Okay.
Yeah, these are all Alaris Terminators.
Okay, I actually thought that
it's-
Trojan was a sword and board unit when I first looked at it. My bad.
I mean, Trajan is back here. He's right there.
Yeah, the unit that like the 3-man unit directly in front of him was a sword and board unit. I misevaluated.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Benjamin, you want to go up?
Yeah, just one thing. I think I may have sent you the wrong version of my list. I have one
no.
relic on that I have to change, but that's okay. So everything else is the same. My list is pretty wild. I'm a big fan of it. All right, so we have a change caster and the changeling. We got Boon of Change and Flickering Flames on the change caster so that he can give a Tzeentch unit +1 to wound with shooting weapons, and he also kind of does the Agents of Bile thing where he picks a unit, roll a d3. It's 1's an extra strength, 2's an extra attack, 3's an extra toughness. All three of those options are pretty good on most of the units in this army. And then we have the Changeling who's got Gaze of Fate, who gives you an old style command reroll. So like a reroll that works on anything, not just like the new list.
Mm-hmm.
We got 30 pink cores, 2 units of 5 Nurglings, 1 unit of 4 Nurglings, 2 units of 3 Nurglings, 9 Flamers, then a Thousand Suns Supreme Command attachment with Magnus the Red in it, and then a Thousand Suns Patrol detachment with Armon with Infernal Gaze, Warp Time, and Weaver of Fates, a Demon Prince of Tzeentch with a sword. He's the High Magister, and he's got Diabolic Strength and Glamour of Tzeentch. I think I put on the list that he is a relic, but he doesn't. We got 10 cultists, 1 Zanger Shaman with Helm of the Third Eye and Temporal Manipulation, and then 2 Chaos Spawn for all the reasons that Kevin took Chaos. But yeah, just took that off. For all the reasons that Kevin took Chaos Spawn, they just do so much. So first of all, this is a really good matchup for me. I have like 11 casts in my army, and 8 of them are at +1 or +2. And they're all going to be casting Smite. I'm going to be definitely dropping a lot of my kind of goofy utility spells to just do Smite over and over, because this list is gonna struggle against that. So a couple things. I have 9 command points to start, so I have a lot of options. Magnus can very much start on the table here. He can just start very far back. Those 18-inch like plasma-esque guns that are only strength 5 aren't a big threat to him. There's not enough autocannons on the table to really be a huge threat. So I'm definitely starting off with Magnus being pretty far back, defensively speaking. And then as far as my Nurglings are going, I'm putting my Nurglings pretty far up. I'm taking the center of the board in deployment. I'm not giving my opponent the chance to score dominate. If he wants to score dominate, he's gonna have to throw his entire army into my Nurglings. I'm putting my 3-man Nurglings up front because he's killing anything his guys touch anyway. So there's no point in giving him the 5-man squads when I can just put the 3-man squads in his way. Let me look at my list real quick. I'm sorry. All right. So other things that are happening here. Command points. I am probably spending a command point every turn, as long as those pink horrors are more than 10 guys in that unit. You can spend a command point when a horror unit casts a spell to make it happen on a 9 no matter what. D3 mortal wounds is like pretty relevant here. Other things we're doing, those horror, the flamers for 1 command point, all their 6s to wounds become a mortal wounds. That's 5 mortal wounds on average for a full flamer unit. I'm going to do my best to hide them. My opponent has no indirect fire. And I don't really want to put them out in front of my opponent on turn 1. I want them to come out on the same turn that Magnus is going into melee, which is probably like turn 3. I think my goal here is on turn 1, if my opponent goes first, he's moving over all to my Nurglings. He's going to do a heinous amount of damage to them. I'm going to have to move in the second wave of Nurglings. And by the end of turn 2, I don't really expect to have any Nurglings left on the table. But Aramon and Magnus are going to be blasting away at my opponent with mortal wounds. Magnus has a spell that lets has Doombolt, which is D3 mortal wounds, and then it halves a unit's movement and doesn't let it advance. And then the Cult of Mutations unique spell, which the Demon Prince knows and can cast, is pick a terrain piece within 24 inches, and then pick a unit within 3 inches of that terrain piece, and that unit loses half of its movement speed and gets -1 to advance and charge rolls. So I get to cripple the movement on 2 of my opponent's units. Some of those Sagittarium Guard are deployed in such a way that because that spell does not need line of sight. If you're in a building, and I can't see you, but I can see the building, I can still hit you with that spell.
Yeah.
Some of those Sagittarium Guard are positioned in such a way where if I hit them, they're not getting out of that building on turn 1. So they're just losing their firepower on turn 1 if I go first. And if I go second and they walk out of the building, they run the risk of getting targeted smites or having Nurglings bump into them. Because, like I said, my army's starting like basically on top of my opponent. Around turn 3 is where I'm probably looking to commit Magnus, unless my opponent does something crazy like put all of his firepower into Magnus. If my opponent puts all his firepower into Magnus, I'll put Magnus in on turn 2. But my opponent's probably already lost the game at that point because he took domination, and if he's not hitting the Nurglings and those pink horrors, which do nothing, by the way, like the pink horrors are basically a do nothing unit. So there's a really strong chance that there's a turn in this game where my 30 pink horrors just charge every model in my opponent's army just to lock them down for a turn. Because they don't do anything. Like 90 AP 0 shots is like whatever. I might kill like half of a dude. So yeah, the overall game plan is like turn 1 and turn 2. Just control the center of the board with my piles and piles of demonic wounds. Magnus is going to be moving up to be within 18 inches of a unit, casting Infernal Gateway, and then Armon's going to warp time him back out so that he's never in range of any of the higher strength plasma-esque weapons, and that he's never in danger of getting charged. We're going to be doing all sorts of mortal wounds every turn. Once Magnus goes down, that Demon Prince can pick up all of the buffs that Magnus was getting before. The Demon Prince also knows Diabolic Strength, which brings him up to Strength 10, which is twice the strength, which is twice the Custodian's toughness. So he wounds the Custodians on 2. He's AP2, does 3 damage. Magnus also knows Death Hex, so Magnus is going to has the ability to just take the invulnerable save off of and kill one of those dreadnoughts. Like the turn where Magnus goes in, he's just going to pop a dreadnought. That's the plan for Magnus. And like the dreadnought's not going to ever get to swing back; it's just going down.
Yeah, fair.
So, and I don't think their autocannons are scary enough to really kill him before turn 2 or like turn 3. Because keep in mind, with the new Psychic Awakening for Thousand Suns, he's healing D3 every turn from the Psychic Power Temporal Manipulation, and then every time he casts a spell on 9 up, I can spend another command point to heal him for D3 more. And then he's on 3 up invulnerable save, -1 to be hit. The Changeling gives him a 6 up feel no pain. And it's just kind of a nightmare to try to kill him. And my goal is to just not give my opponent the chance to ever point firepower at him, or to make it so that they're pointing firepower at him, they're just giving up the middle of the table, at which point they've lost. As far as secondaries go, I'm also taking Engage in all fronts because it's pretty much free for my list. I have the 2 Chaos Spawn are kind of secondary to that, but like I literally start the game deployed in every table corner. And I'm going to keep pushing towards the middle of the table to just like force my opponent to deal with all that stuff. I'm probably also going to take Deploy Scramblers. I don't have as many units that can do Deploy Scramblers, so it's a little risky to do that. I'm almost definitely going to take the Mission secondary. I think that if my opponent fights to stop me from scoring it, they probably just lose, because they're just going to take so much damage from mortal wounds on things that just plant in the middle of the table. Especially if they put things down where like flamers can peek out behind a building and murder things without having to expose themselves to the full firepower of the enemy army. For the most part, I'm just relying on the amount of mortal wounds my army does versus this Custodes list. Like he just doesn't have the wound count to stand up to what my list is bringing. And then the 2 movement crippling powers are like, they're so real against Custodes. The armies already struggles a little bit with mobility, and then you start pointing at their units and taking half their movement characteristics away and putting penalties on advancing and charging. They just don't get to participate. So yeah, I think that I just have enough going on that I can, do enough damage to prevent him from really scoring against me. And before I go in for that killing blow, I think I'm going to slow him down enough that even if I end up on the back foot by the end of the game because I trade away all my resources, like if like something wild happens and I end up losing all my resources by like turn 3, turn 4, I plan on having already maxed most of my. I'm gonna have maxed my primary like by 4. Like I'm gonna be holding everything, which is aggressive. Like I am going to lose all of my Nurglings. I'm like I said, I'm gonna push all my pink horrors at my opponent. I'm gonna lose most of them too, but it's just gonna be so much damage. Like the flamers are disgusting. They'll take out a whole unit of the Sagittarium Guard on their own with that stratagem where they just do mortal wounds. They do 5.5 mortal wounds on average before they start rolling saves, which is just completely crippling to Custodes. I'm trying to think about secondaries now. It's been so long since I played a game of Ninth Edition.
Mhm.
I was feeling that.
It's like what secondaries are like. Engaging all fronts is free. It's just actually free for this list, which is one of the reasons I love this list so much. Scramblers is a little tricky because I only have the horrors, the cultists, and the characters. The characters aren't really in love with giving up their psychic phase to do actions. Although amusingly, the cultists are probably going to be able to do scramblers in my zone and out of my zone, because if I just like put them in a corner somewhere, my opponent does not have time to shoot at some cultists. Like they just don't have time, which just means the last thing I need to worry about is getting something into my opponent's deployment zone, which I can do towards the end of the game. I'm still not in love with that secondary. Man, I'm trying to think of what the secondaries are now. My goodness, it's been a second. I like I said, I'm definitely taking engage and the mission one. And then after that, I'll probably raise banners. I'm probably just going to raise the banners on some of the deployment zones, some of the objectives that are like around the table with those cultists. Like my, can you show me the table one more time?
Yeah.
Chris?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to take raise banners. I think the cultists can just raise some banners, and my opponent just doesn't have time to go for them. Chad's asking, would I take Psychic Secondary with my list? No, I would not. I think that the Psychic Secondaries are really, really bad if you have Psychers that cost more than 50 points. My cheapest Psyker is 85.
The only time you should take a Psychic Secondary that isn't Abhor the Witch is if you're playing Astra Militarum and you brought Astropaths specifically for doing Psychic Secondaries.
Yeah, I think it's just too hard.
I mean, you could do it with your Zangoran Shaman, right?
I could, but like,
can you do it with your rubric?
I'm not bringing
rubric. Okay,
I'm not bringing rubric marines, and also rubric marines cannot do psychic secondaries.
There you go.
There's a version of this list that brings rubric marines, but it's not to do psychic secondaries. It's so that I have a slightly easier time with distributing my spells in a more reasonable way. The rubric marines would be taking the healing spell, so that the Zanger Shaman could take one of the defensive spells, so Armon could pour more oomph into casting some mortal wounds. But yeah, I feel like against this particular matchup, a lot of the ways my opponent is trying to be defensive, like giving me penalties to hit, having excellent armor saves, like that's just not the game my list is playing.
Yeah, no, you're just completely just sidestepping that entire issue, and you're just dealing direct damage to.
Yeah, I only have one weapon that relies on armor penetration, and it's attached to a model that can cast Death X on +2 rerolling once. So it's just like at no point are my opponent's defensive mechanics operating. So I just feel like this is a very good matchup for me.
Yeah, I liked it a lot, and honestly, it makes me miss playing Chaos, and I am very excited for when a new Chaos book comes out, so I can stop playing White Scars.
Hey, what's wrong with White Scars?
I think that this list is like good right now. Like I don't think you need to wait for that book to come out.
So speaking of White Scars, Chris, I noticed you haven't said what you would do. Is that because
what you did,
actually
right?
happened?
What you did.
This is because I'm not going to be talking about what I would do. I'm going to be talking about what I actually did in this game.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, this was basically the deployment that my opponent had for my game, and let me see. Let me show you guys what I actually ended up doing. So, the army I had for this particular matchup was a Bike Chaplain, a Reaver Lieutenant who was the Warlord. The Chaplain's obviously a Master of Sanctity, got Wise Orator. He's got the +2 inch charge and +1 to wound prayer. The Reaver Lieutenant knows Rites of War. He's got the Vox of Spiritum, so he's got that 9-inch OBSEC aura. And the reroll 1's aura for troops. It was a unit of 5 heavy intercessors with the Executioner bolters. That's one more thing why TTS is nice, because you can use units that don't even have model kits yet. 2 units of infiltrators, 2 5-mans of plasma scepters, a 4-man of eradicators with the regular melter rifles, 2 5-man of blade guard, one 10-man of Lightning Claw Storm Shield Vanguard vets, and one Primaris Apothecary, who's the chief apothecary, and he's got the Selfless Healer trait and the Plume of the Planesrunner relic, so that you can give nearby infantry +1 advance, +1 charge. So,
Chris, I think your opponent may have just dropped in chat.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, he wants to make sure that I retell the tale accurately and not, tell the world that he lost terribly, because the opposite is true. So,
oh
yeah. I'll show you the end game board state afterwards because I saved it. I'm pretty sure. Did I save it? Oh no, I didn't. No. All right. Well, it was really bad. But
I'm sure your opponent can tell us in chat. We'll
yeah.
read it verbatim.
So basically, I deployed like those dudes here. Those are one squad of Plasma Scepters, some Vanguard vets there. I put the second squad of Inceptors into Deep Strike. These Eradicators were, just behind this building over here, so that they could just walk up and shoot it. The Apothecary was over here. The Lieutenant was over here. The Chaplain was over here. Can't remember. Did I give the Chaplain the Relic Bike? Yeah, he has the White Scars Relic Bike, so it's 16-inch move and can move across models and terrain.
So you can just fly through the building if he needs to.
Yeah. The heavy intercessors were like in this building here. And then the infiltrators, I had, one squad in these ruins here. And the other squad were, behind these ruins up over here. So basically, the Blade Guard. The Blade Guard were like over here. They were more like
So for those of you who are just listening in and cannot see what Chris is currently doing, it's a pretty defensive deployment. Pretty much everything is behind a building. He has his 1/4 deploying unit is like just behind another unit building outside of a deployment zone. So it looks like for the most part we are not contesting for the middle of the table, but if your opponent moves up, you will be able to charge him.
That's correct. So I had a couple of days to analyze this list, and I knew like the 2 Telemons were not so much scary as like I thought it might have been like a trap to start shooting at them, because like T8, 14 wounds, 2 up save, 4 up invulnerable save, 6 up feel no pain, -1 strength to shoot at it, duty eternal for -1 damage taken. It's I did the math on it, and if I did like all of my damage units into a Telemon and I had buffs on it and everything, I had like a coin flip chance to 1 turn a Telemon. Which
so I
isn't great.
I do note that you have, is that a unit of Plasma Inceptors and Assault Marines just like hanging out between those 2 buildings, nothing in front of them?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So what was the thought process behind that?
The thought process here was that I wasn't so much worried about the shooting from the Telemons and wasn't so much worried about the shooting from the Custodians. I figured the Plasma Scepters would be a bigger threat to him, and he'd want to shoot at the tougher, Gravis armor guys first before touching the Vanguard Marines. And from the get-go, I deployed this knowing that I wanted to move my Vanguard veterans over this way over here to the far side of the board, and hopefully try to get around back to his table quarter by using this piece of terrain over here as cover.
So the plan is if he goes first, you're hoping not to lose too much of that stuff because of the Gravis armor guys, and then the Vanguard bats can dash behind a building.
Yeah, so I knew if I only had 1 unit of Plasma Inceptors, I knew I was gonna, I'd have to put them in reserve. And I wouldn't have just left them out in the open like this, because if they lose, then there goes 250 points of shooting.
Yeah.
And having said that, I knew that, I had the second unit of Plasma Inceptors that I was able to put in reserve. So even if those guys gets totally schwacked turn 1 and I can't do anything with them, I at least have that bit to fall back on. And I've still got, still a significant chunk of my army. And even if he shoots at the Vanguard vets, they all got Storm Shields. They'll be able to, absorb a bit of damage. And, there's 10 of them.
Because all I can think when looking at this deployment is that if your opponent goes first, you're just losing all those Plasma Inceptors, and those Plasma Inceptors are one of your best answers to what your opponent's doing.
Spoiler alert, I did, and they were.
Oh, your opponent went first and you lost them all. Okay.
Yeah. So that was one mistake on my part. But my going into this, my plan was for scoring the primary. I knew that all I needed was to hold on to 2 objectives the whole game, and then for one of them, go out and hold one other objective and get the hold more. And I'd be scoring the 45 for primary. So I also structured my secondaries around that as well. I took engage, I took while we stand, and which was the 3 characters that I've got, and then what was the last one I took? The last one I took was raise banners. So I was basically just trying to, my game plan going in is I knew he's coming into the middle. He's going to come into the middle with his 5 Terminators. He's going to come into the middle with the Vexilla. He's going to come in the middle with Trajan, the Contemptor, and the 2 Telemons. That's just what he's set up to do. The only real mobile part of the army is the Jet Bike Captain, which, again, I've got the... I've got enough tools to deal with the Jet Bike Captain where I'm not that worried about it. Diablo in chat is saying that no, I actually had 30 points left over. Yeah, he forgot to give his Vexilla a gun. Apparently that costs points.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, he still beat me handily, so it's whatever. But
you can blame the box art not having a gun for that reason.
But yeah, like, so my game plan was just, have a tenuous hold on this neutral zone objective over here, but get my blade guard up the board to over in the opposite corner, and seed the middle and just try to like hold them off and kite the Telemons out. And then, as I'm moving around the board, just trying to pick off whatever infantry models that I can with my shooting, just because I know that it's Custodes, it's a 19 model army. I know that every model that he loses is gonna hurt a bit.
Yeah. Could you hold that objective that you have circled on the bottom right from that building?
No, I cannot. I gotta peek out from the building.
That seems scary, given the firepower he has behind that building.
Yeah, so I drastically underestimated the firepower of Sagittarium Guard. Yeah. So they did end up doing a lot of work on me. But I don't know, I'm curious to what you guys think, given, what do you think of the overall strategy of, playing defensively, trying to just kite the Telemons until like turn 3 where I can turn on the assault doctrine and, basically recognizing the Telemons for the bullet sponge traps that they are.
So there's 5 objectives on this table. I think that your general idea of being able to threaten the middle of the table with huge charges from behind that building is generally solid. I just think your execution was a little questionable. And I guess you lost this game, so I don't feel as bad saying it is really questionable. I'm not entirely sure why those plasma inceptors are hanging out in the open. I like what's happening behind that main building in your deployment zone, where you just have your whole army bunched up behind it. Nothing can be seen. Pretty much everything's in charge range of anything that he puts in the middle of the table. Like, that's great. I really like that. I don't know if there was any value to those 5 infiltrators behind trying to hold that objective over there. Like, I get the feeling of like, man, I want to try and like give myself the chance to hold that objective, but I think ultimately you're better off putting your assault vanguard behind the terrain and just being able to let them advance and charge into that objective if your opponent puts something on that objective, and instead just putting all 10 of your infiltrators behind the building on the opposite side, like on the top left corner, because there's another building in between in between that corner and your opponent that they can basically hide behind. So your opponent really has to commit to either running around that building or putting things in the melee with them to get you off of that objective. So you could be holding 2 pretty comfortably and then contest the middle if you go second.
Yeah, so that was one of my key movement mistakes in this game was when I moved my squad of 10 Vanguard veterans. Like you said, I could have just easily moved them behind this ruin, and this ruin doesn't have any windows in it, so it would have blocked line of sight totally. But I really thought that I was I was gambling basically on a dice roll for using with the stratagem Windswift, which, after you make a normal move, then you can make an advanced move. So I moved them behind the first ruin here, and then I used Windswift with the hope that, with my 12 plus d6 inch move, that I'd be able to get them behind that second ruin and get them safe. And that way, the next turn, either I can continue hanging out and move maybe even further into his deployment zone, or I can use adaptive strategy on them to turn on, the 2 damage lightning claws. But what ended up happening was I rolled a 1 and got caught with my ass out in the open. And, like I said, I vastly underestimated the damage output of Sagittarium Guard because I used to being like not as good. Because I remember before the new Imperial armor, if you rolled a 1 on like their supercharged shooting profile, I'm pretty sure it was like plasma and they just blew up.
They take a mortal wound.
They took a mortal wound. Yeah, there was a downside to actually, shooting both profiles.
Don't ask me how the guy to my right gun overheating causes me to get a mortal wound, but that's how custodes roll.
I would just always be suspect of any plan that puts me on like I need to roll unless like you feel like you're heinously outmatched and then you just need to play aggressively and you need to win the die roll. But I think that
I think it was way too early in the game to stake the game or stake a unit's well-being on a die roll.
Because the game hadn't started.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what ended up happening was like I didn't do the math on how I would fare against the Alaris custodians, the Terminators. I did the math on like killing the Telemons, and I was like, you know what? I want nothing to fucking do with that. I don't want to shoot at them. I don't want to try to engage them in combat. Their shooting isn't that bad. I'll just run circles around them because it's like 8-inch move. But they moved forward with the 5-man unit of Alaris, and realistically, if I had committed to the center with all of my buffs and all of that, I probably could have easily taken out the 5 Alaris with a combination of the Blade Guard and the Vanguard veterans. And then I'm just hanging out with 2 Telemons that only have a few attacks, and I'm taking Power Fist attacks on a Storm Shield. So it's not too bad. And instead, because the Telemons there, and I had already mentally committed to, all right, I'm just going to run away and not engage the Telemons. I'm just not going to play that game. What ended up happening was I also didn't engage the Alaris Terminators as well because they were just right next to the Telemons. And turns out Alaris Terminators have a stratagem that lets them ignore Lookout Sir. And
that one exists.
And they just popped my lieutenant and then popped my apothecary. So
yeah,
well, that's the lesson you learned.
It's impressive. They don't. Were they within? Sorry, did you say they were within half range or within 12 inches?
At that point, I think so. I think it was close enough.
Yeah, their firepower is not great, but like they will pop your guys if you let them get too close.
Well, their firepower is like amazing at 12 and less inches, and kind of terrible. Like they don't actually have character popping abilities beyond that. It's like 1 shot per guy with a mastercrafted bolter, or 2 shots, and then also this random other high AP gun.
Oh, gotcha. All right. Chris's opponent is saying in chat it was perhaps 2 different turns.
Oh yeah, it was. He popped the lieutenant on 1 turn, and then I think one of the subsequent turns ended up just piling and consolidating with Alaris into the apothecary and killing him that way.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Looking at this deployment, I could definitely see how things fall apart if you go second.
Yeah, and I think one of my main pitfalls with this was that I wasn't being adaptable enough, where I went into this game thinking I got to run away from Telemons. I got to kite the Telemons. I got to just win on objectives, and just play keep away and plink away at things. And when the opportunity presented itself to charge the middle of the board, take out the Alaris, and take out, the Vexilla and Trajan. I didn't see that opportunity for what it was because I just focused so hard on that first runaway and kite strategy that I had. So I think cautionary tale, be ready to adapt to, you might have after reviewing the list and seeing your army's capabilities, you might have a good idea of what you should do. But, it's like that saying about, how no plan survives contact with the enemy. I should have instantly reevaluated everything the moment I saw both the Alaris and the Telemads advancing side by side. Because I honestly expected the Alaris to be in Deep Strike.
Yeah, I'm shocked they started on the board.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. Did I have the?
I think you need some. I think it makes sense because you need something to move up with OBSEC. Like originally, that's what I think Alaris is supposed to be doing initially. But then when you actually think about how the game plays and what you actually need to do for the addition, you need something on the board to walk up the middle. But he doesn't.
Yeah,
have a lot.
and like you said, like the Sagittarium, I can't remember if they had Misericordia or not. I don't think they did.
They did not.
Yeah, they didn't.
They did not.
Okay, they didn't. So like they weren't a credible melee threat. And when you're charging up in the middle of the board against a White Scars army, you gotta be able to do more than just slap them back. And beyond that, you've got Trajan and you've got the Vexilla there as well. I think you'd be remiss in this scenario to start the Alaris off the board.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, they're miserably slow and deep striking them makes sense, but especially like this particular deployment zone, with 5 objectives, like they start so close to the center objective. On turn 1, they're going to be standing on it every time, and that just seems like exactly where they want to be.
Yeah, even with a 5-inch move, like you're gonna be on the objective, even if you just do a regular move.
So
I think Alaris have a 6-inch move though.
They do. No, Terminators are slowed down by because those are slower than 6 inches. I forget. When you were initially talking about why you placed the Inceptors there, what was the gain? What were we getting? Was it a better position in a turn? Like,
honestly, the gain was offering them up as a sacrificial lamb in case I went second to protect my Vanguard, which probably should have been reversed, and I probably should have just hit all of them, or at the very least put the Plasma Scepters off the board as well, both sets.
Yeah, I feel like all the Plasma Scepters should have been off the board, and the Vanguard vets could just be hiding behind that building. I don't know the exact measurements, but it almost looks like they might be able to make it to the other building with a double move from behind that first building. You can correct me if I'm just totally off of that. And either way, their movement range is such that they're just such a huge threat when they're hiding behind that building. Like, they're going to be able to hit so much of the table from where they were standing.
Yeah. Chat's saying that the Alaris also create a 24-inch bubble where you can't put a squishy character in line of sight of them, which is a very valid point. And, like a 12 or 24-inch bubble on the smaller game board now is like the entire board.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird to ask a question to chat, but do you feel like that range is closer to actually 18, not 24? Like, is the one Mastercrafted shot really a threat to squishy character? I guess it depends on how squishy, but
I think it depends on how squishy. I mean, like, it's only strength 4 AP1, but it is 2 damage. I think 18 inches is the more threatening range because you can move and then you're in the rapid fire. But if you got a character with like only like 2 wounds left, and that's, I think, spending the CP to pop off 5 shots at him when he only needs to make fail 1 save and he's dead. I think that's when the 24-inch threat range comes into play.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I actually take that back a little bit. I just remember Custodes have a charge them to double shoot their rapid fire guns. So
yes, they do.
That actually, and it's funny.
So
they've had the character shooting since their first codex, and only the double shooting since
Psychic.
Yeah. So they take like 3 wounds on average off if they're double shooting. But But do they also get to shoot their grenade launchers at the character?
Believe it's just everything. Let me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah. Use this strategy when you select a unit of Alaris to make their attacks until end of phase. Each time you select a target for a weapon, you can ignore Lookout Sir.
Yeah. So in the grenade launchers, what, 18-inch gun?
12.
12. Yeah, I feel like it's probably 18-inch. In the 18 inches, you're just popping characters, like the squishy characters, quote unquote squishy, like 4-wound marine characters, pretty easily. Which is gross. Like 18 inches is a significant amount of the table now that the table's so small.
Yeah, that's 36 end to end of that aura. You know, so that's a 18-inch bubble, which is 36 inches in diameter. You know, the board at its widest is 60 inches. That's over half the board right there.
Is that? And I apologize. Was that a 6-man squad of Terminators or 2 3s?
It was 1
I think
5.
it's a 5.
It was 1 5. Yeah. Okay. Then yeah. And with 1 5, they're popping a character pretty comfortably.
Yeah. You know, the bike chaplain might not be as vulnerable to that, but definitely a lieutenant or an apothecary or, you know, just a foot captain, definitely very vulnerable. Especially the lieutenant who does not have an invul.
By the way, in the future, the turn you go in, like you like, let's say you do like it's turn 3, we're gonna go all in. Send the chaplain into the Sagittarium guard. He'll kill them, and they won't be able to kill him back. And you'll be wrapping up everything else in their army. And you can move through with his guys so you can get there. One of the recommendations I'd make in the future, especially since they don't have Mezzocordius. They can't hit him back.
Yeah. So this game, I ended up killing 4 models, and the chaplain did half the damage.
Oh,
That's what did you have left?
I got tabled.
On what turn?
I want to say turn 4.
Oh goodness. Okay.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that.
so I killed 2 Sagittarium with the chaplain. I killed the bike captain with plasma scepters. And I killed one Alaris with my blade guard.
All right. Well, you tried.
I think I focused way too heavily on sticking to my game plan and just trying to score objective points, without, you know, appreciating that if you kill the other guy, he also cannot score objective points.
Yeah, custodes are interesting. They've kind of changed a lot in their army identity, where they now are dangerous enough that you can't just play the mission against them. Like they will table you, depending on your list. Like they have enough armor penetration that they are serious threats to power armor lists.
Yeah, and to put this into perspective, my most like frequent Custodes opponent, like basically every game I've played against Custodes aside from this one and then one at like a doubles tournament, has been against Omar, who doesn't own like any of the Forge World stuff.
But even then though, like the Forge World stuff's great, but you don't need them the way you did before. Like, yeah, Sagittarium you do. Not fight that at all. Not saying you don't. But I mean, Alar's Terminators and bikes do a lot of work on their own. And I think there's a list where it's more of those in the dreads.
Yeah. I did give you a Caladius Graph Tank, though.
You did. I need to build it.
All right.
Any closing thoughts on this? I think we all had some interesting takes on how to approach this problem. You know, Benjamin obviously had the just smite it, you know, approach to it, which playing 1,000 Suns and Demons list, which, you know, that's kind of just what you do, and Custodes is just very vulnerable to that.
Full disclosure, I was not told what list I was going to be up against. I was just like, this is a list I want to bring to an event. Had I known that this was the list, I probably wouldn't have presented the one I did, just because I feel like it's a little bit of a free roll with just like,
it's totally a hard counter.
My list just like happens to match up against that one like very, very well. It's not a free roll. Like there are ways that I lose that game, but it's favored for me.
Yeah. So
I do enjoy how we started this. Like, okay, we're going to say who's gonna start talking, and you're like, Omar, can you go first? I really need to think about my strategy here. I'm just like,
Uh
Ben, you're just gonna brain bullet the guy. That's the strategy. Brain bullets.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I had to run some numbers real quick, and then I was like, all right, so he's like tabled on 3 after my 3rd psychic phase. All right, well, I could pretend there's more to it than that.
I need to think about it. You're playing Thousand Suns with Magnus.
Like, go away, you monster.
So yeah, I think Omar, I think you had a unique approach to this as well, especially that that combo with the assault intercessors. I think assault intercessors get overlooked a lot, just because people are like, well, why not just bring regular intercessors then bring a power fist? And it's like, well, because they just shit out like the whole like weight of attacks, especially if you bring a 10-man and you're making them fight again and you're fishing for 6s, especially as ultramarines where you can reroll everything and just fish for 6s on Gene Rot Might. I think that's I feel like that's an underappreciated tactic with assault intercessors. Granted, it's vulnerable to blast, but you know.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. The only reason I know about that tactic is because one of the games Chris and I were playing, my assault intercessors were the only thing that could charge us Centurions, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's see what happened. And it went a lot better than we thought it would. Both of us were kind of shocked at like, oh, when you can just re-roll 40 hits fishing for 6s, this ends up going a lot better than you think it does.
Yeah, you end up getting like, I don't know, like 15, 20 automatic wounds.
Yeah.
You know, which ain't bad. Which ain't bad.
No.
Yeah, Kevin, I enjoyed your take on it a lot as well, which was kind of similar to Omar's, in which you're just like, hey, a bunch of chainsword dudes, just run at them. But I mean, there's a little bit more nuance to that because chaos is better.
Yes, chaos is better at being worse. You get to do so many more things and come out worse.
Yep.
I'm gonna stick as being one of the Emperor's children chosen.
Yeah, nice Freudian slip there.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
They're like
One of us.
literally my most hated chapter.
All right. Anything else before we close out this week's episode, guys?
No.
No, I think that's it.
All right.
I just want to shout out to your opponent and thank him for coming by and chatting with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Diablo, thank you very much for stopping by the chat and reminiscing and pointing out where I misremembered things to assuage my own ego. But I mean, like, you know, we need a beat down every once in a while to help us remember that, you know, we're not infallible.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So with that, you know, thank you everybody for listening to this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank our contributors for this episode, Omar Q, Benjamin Rubenstein, and Kevin Lieb. This has been the 3D6 Charge podcast. Bye for now, and don't roll any ones.
Ring the bell, smash the like button. Do it. Do it.